Well, hello guys, and welcome to a Glendale Out Spotlight interview. I have two very special guests today. My name is Spencer Carney. I am a professional actor and activist that lives here in Glendale, California. And today I am with... On one side.
Hi, I'm Ciaran Pierce.
Oh man,
I'm
okay. Let's start with the individual with a yellow shoulder.
Okay, so that's me. Hi, my name is Ciaran Pierce. I identify.
Wait! And also, we're with Sofia.
Hi, I'm Sofia Magdaleno.
And I was going to ask you some questions, but you know, Kieran's already on it. He's ready to go to answer them. And what I was going to ask both of you guys was, I want to know exactly, you know, what grade you're in, because folks, these guys are still in high school, what high school you go to, and then where you fall on the gender and sexuality spectrum, if you identify at all. Perhaps you don't, perhaps you are agender or asexual, and how long you've been a resident of Glendale. And then let's start with Ciaran.
Yeah.
All right, so as you know, my name is Ciaran Pierce. I am 18 years old. I attend Crescenta Valley High School. I'm a senior, so 12th grade. On the gender spectrum, I identify as a male, and as for my sexuality, I identify as gay. I've been living in Glendale for, I think this is the 12th year, so 12 years living in Glendale.
Wow. And what about you, Sophia?
So I am Sofia Magdaleno. My pronouns are she, they, and I am a junior in high school at Crescenta Valley. I'm 16 years old, and on the gender spectrum, it's kind of a difficult question. I'd say I lay somewhere on the genderqueer spectrum, as my pronouns are she, they. Still kind of figuring that out, and it's definitely been a journey. And on the sexuality spectrum, I'm a lesbian. Yeah. I've been a resident of Glendale for, I guess, technically 10 years. I moved to Montrose and then La Crescenta, so all part of Glendale, I guess. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you said you were 16 years old. Does that put you in your junior year in high school?
Yeah, I'm in my junior year. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm going to follow up. So you were in Montrose. Was that when you were in elementary school that you were? And then okay. And was it like, in what grade in elementary school did you move to Glendale?
First grade. So
first grade.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
That's basically like being in an entire school district, you know, like who remembers kindergarten, you know, like I feel like first grade is the year it all starts.
Definitely.
Speaking of when it all starts, when did you guys come to an awareness about these identity things? I mean, like, I actually am curious, Ciaran, we're going to come up to you, but with Sophia, being on the genderqueer spectrum, was that something that came first before you started discovering more of your sexuality?
Definitely. I've always been pretty masculine, pretty androgynous. I first cut my hair short to a length that people would consider a boy length when I was in 4th grade. And it was definitely a battle with my parents, but I was able to. And for a good amount of time in elementary school, like when I was in 4th grade all the way to when I was in 6th grade, I definitely wore more masculine clothing. I was never really a girly girl. I did sports, basketball, softball, soccer, you name it. And I was definitely a stereotypical lesbian, as many would say, as a kid. And then I explored my femininity a little bit in middle school, in the beginning of high school. Always was questioning my gender, never really put words to it, never really figured it out. And for a while, I just identified as a cisgendered woman. I only recently kind of came to terms with the urge to change my pronouns probably a month or two ago. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and I'm only starting to explore more about myself.
I think I'm already like thinking about some questions, and on this next one I'm going to ask, Ciaran, feel free to jump on. Because you guys are still in school, I might touch on the subject of bullying. You know, like I was bullied for being gay when I didn't even really know what gay was. You know, like it wasn't until I was in high school that I was like in my head, I'm gay, but I was still like, I never really had like a coming out in school because everyone was just like, he's, you know, and so like, and that started with elementary school, like in first grade, when I wanted to do things that were outside the gender norm. And so, you know, like for someone like who you describe as like, you wanted to have more visual representations of your identity, your shortened hair, your whether how you expressed yourself in your clothing and stuff like that. And so because that isn't something that's really, you know, hidden away, you know, it's like we're able to like, was that difficult for you? Difficult for you to express yourself that way?
Not extremely, especially in elementary school. It was never really an issue. I definitely think it started to make a difference once I was in high school. I was looked at differently, sort of, not ever really like sexualized as being a assigned female at birth. A lot of teenage girls do struggle with that, and I never felt that I was looked at in that way, and that was probably, I personally thought it was a good thing. I didn't have to worry about my appearance as much, and it did set me apart from my peers, which was a little disheartening and isolating, especially in high school. And so it's definitely a blessing and a curse. But I've never really been totally bullied for it.
What about you, Ciaran? When did you come to an awareness of being gay, and was that something that people felt like they needed to comment on?
Right. So my story is interesting because I knew from a very early age on that and I mean, you hear these stories of, my queer, like fellow students talking about how they, they kind of had like signs here and there that they would maybe question something, but they didn't really have like, they weren't cognizant of the fact that, oh, I am not straight. But for me, it was, I believe in sixth grade was the earliest when I kind of knew, oh, I don't like girls. I mean, I tried to kind of push that under, and I was definitely in denial, and I would have these crushes on girls, but I didn't quite understand that they were more romantic kind of connections that I was having, and I was kind of perceiving them to be sexual, and it was interesting. And then middle school rolled along, and I thought, I went through a bunch of I went back and forth from, oh, I'm straight, to, oh, I could be bisexual, trying to opt out of, I'm fully gay. I'm ruining like my parents' like dream of like me walking down the aisle with a woman. And so yeah, then I kind of just, by eighth grade, I was fully out, I'd say, to my close circle of friends, and that quickly spread, so I didn't have to do much work. By high school, I'd say, by ninth grade, everybody knew, and it was just, I'm very lucky because I didn't really experience that much, intolerance from others. There are a few microaggressions here and there, a few words and stuff, I would, there were definitely some people who did not approve of it, but for me, it was just, I don't know, I was confident in myself, and I didn't really care what people thought. So yeah, I definitely knew at a very early age. Yeah.
Did this become sort of like, for both of you, something that was like between you and your friends at school, or was this something that your family came to an awareness to?
I personally have never really had any issues coming out to my family. They've known from when I first came out, as I first came out as bi, and my parents were supportive of it. I told my dad
How
before
old
telling
were you?
I was 13, coming out of 8th
You
grade,
guys are blowing my mind.
and coming out as gay, as well as 8th grade.
I was 13 as
And
well. That's weird.
yeah, I've actually heard that a lot of people are around 13. They kind of figure it out between 12 and 14, but definitely 13 is a big number. But yeah, I've never really had any issues with that. Luckily, my parents were both very accepting. My sister actually came out before me. My sister's 6 years older than me, and she originally came out as bisexual, and so that was kind of the leading path for me, and definitely made me think about, what if I'm gay? And so I think I'm very thankful for her coming out before me, letting me
That's
know.
amazing.
Hmm?
Did you have a role model as well, Ciaran, or what's your situation?
For my parents' situation was a little more complex. See, I kind of lived two different lives. One at school where I was fully, open and honest with my friends, and then at home, that's when I think the shutters would close and I would kind of, you know, burrow back into that, that hole of hiding. And so it wasn't that I knew my parents weren't going to be accepting, because they had told me they would love me no matter what in the past. I'm very, very lucky to have accepting parents, and I say that constantly. But anyway, I came out to them not by choice. I was actually admitted into a mental hospital summer going into freshman year, and so in the process, law enforcement had found my journal, and so they were allowed to, pass on all that information to my parents, and they found out because I had been writing about my struggles and my concerns with certain like boys that I would like. And so then they asked me. I remember we were at a meeting, parent meeting in the hospital, and they just said, "We love you no matter what." And it was weird because I didn't appreciate it as much because I was already had already built that foundation of this is who I am and I don't care what anybody else thinks. So I definitely did appreciate it though. It was a pivotal moment, I think.
I guess what I'm coming to think about now is like, so Sofia, when you said because your older sister had come out, and what was that conversation like for you with your parents? Was it just like over dinner, just something that happened, in front of the TV? It was just like, oh yeah, like,
Well, one of the biggest indicators for me, finally coming to terms with my sexual identity was, because I did have a crush on my best friend. And so after realizing that, I was like, okay, I need to come out if I'm actually gonna let myself do anything. And I've always been a pretty outward person emotionally with my parents. And so I've kind of learned to be, because my parents they got divorced they separated when I was in 7th grade, but there were always problems, and so I was kind of forced to be outward emotionally to process what was going on at home. So coming out was not necessarily scary, but it wasn't necessarily casual either, because it was sort of an elephant in the room. Like, everybody kind of knew, but they didn't want to force me to come to terms with something I wasn't ready for. So it was actually at a Starbucks, I think, that I came out to my dad. And it was as casual a Starbucks conversation, but it did have emotional depth, and I was a little bit emotionally exhausted after, but I think it was a positive thing. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you guys so much for sharing some of those things. I'm sure those could be, some dark things to touch upon. I mean, for me, it was a lot like Sophia's situation, where I kind of did a blend of you two, actually, where I came out to my close friends in college, and I got, it was like, oh, I'm gonna like steel myself, like I'm going to live no matter what. And then, I just had like random like demons that I had made for myself about my family, when in fact, I guess my family was like Sophia's family, where they were just like, we knew all along, we're waiting for the moment, we weren't trying to force you. It was the elephant in the room that I just had to like address, where my parents were like, oh, like, are you seeing any girls? And I was like, I think I'm not gonna be with a girl. And they're like, oh, okay. And then like 2 weeks later, okay, wait, is that what you were trying to tell us? And I was like, yes. And they're like, okay, good. But one thing, I share that because I do want to revisit this dark moment of yours, Ciaran, if I may. You don't have to go into detail, because it more leads into sort of like what I'm going to be asking you guys is sort of like what advice that you guys would give for parents and teachers, so that they could sort of tell you beforehand, so there's no mystery. Because I feel like a lot of the coming out process, it's because of a lack of mystery it is a mystery, I shouldn't say a lack of, but it's like that sort of like not knowing how someone might react, and you just sort of fill in the blanks. And so what if you could go back in time, what would you have preferred the narrative to have been?
I'll go. So I think if I could change one thing about how I kind of experienced coming out, it would have been knowing that having my parents just acknowledge the fact that no matter what, if you're gay, straight, anything, it doesn't matter, stand. And my parents did that when I came out. It wasn't something, I think I probably made a mistake when I said that they did it before. I was kind of where most of my internal, like my pain was coming from when I was in the closet. I didn't know if I would be accepted. And, when you're in that mindset, I think both of you guys know that it can get very, very dark in the world that we live in. And you can lead down many mental paths that are not pleasant and very dark. And so the advice I would give to parents, guardians, is to, even if you don't have any predisposed, even if you don't think that your child is part of the LGBTQ community, or doesn't identify with gender conforming stereotypes, let them know that that's okay, and that no matter what do love them unconditionally. I know it would have made me so much more comfortable, and I would have been able to come to the final step much more smoothly.
I apologize, you sort of cut out a little bit. You had said that, I'm trying to remember exactly what you said before the moment that it cut out. It was that, like, if they had said that before, which they had, but just not in a very explicit way, is that what you're trying to say? That like would have given you that reassurance, whether or not one would believe that their kid is actually a part of that community, just letting them know that, if they ever were, that it would be fine. Is that what you said? Oh no, it's cutting out again.
Yeah, when you cut out a little bit there too, but yeah. It's a battle. It's two battles in itself. And once you conquer, I think, the battle of knowing that your parents will love you, now you can focus on the internal battle that's going on within you.
And you had a response, Sophia?
Yeah, I wanted to add on to what Ciaran said. I think if parents were more proactive about letting their kids know that they are tolerant of everybody, of every identity, in an explicit way, like Ciaran was saying, like, we'll love you no matter what, or in a less direct way to make that wouldn't make their kid feel targeted in any way, just promoting allyship towards everybody, and that love and care and support and tolerance that they may have towards the LGBTQ community or any other community. Making people know that is, like, in an indirect way, I think would be very comforting and less confrontational.
I'm going to ask you guys a big question. So, for a family that hasn't had somebody come out yet in their entire family, you know, who may be thinking like, oh, like, it's just not in our family, you know, like there isn't, like, how can we sort of like get to those people to sort of like talk about allyship, to have these questions when in their minds it hasn't touched them yet?
Sophia, do you want to go? Because I answered the last one first.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh,
Me?
do you want to go since I answered the last first?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry.
Am I kind of?
Yeah, a little bit. But I was sort of thinking, that's a hard question. I think because being a part of the LGBTQ community is definitely not as widely accepted, it's almost mandatory to come out as a courtesy, sort of, just to clarify, because we live in a heteronormative society, and like, as much as that's not necessarily a problem, it just makes it harder on the community. And so I think what's necessary in order for the community to be more accepted, more widely accepted in society, in not just Glendale or Los Angeles or California or the United States, everywhere, would be for it to be normalized, because that's the only way that people are going to become accepting, and for people to think about it, to think about the possibility that their kid or relative, whoever it may be gay or trans or anything in between.
So it is a difficult question. I was trying to come up with an answer and I did not come up with anything, but we'll see what I got. So I think for talking to someone who has never had someone come out in their family, first of all, I just think that kind of gives you some almost like leverage in a way, like, oh, I'm not the only one. Like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Like, it's possible to happen before. I would say to them, start the movement in your family then, because somewhere down the line, there's going to be another one. And I guess if you can be that inspiration for yourself and for others, and it's very, like, even saying that, it's very, you can't, like, telling someone to come out is very, it's not your place to say that. They have their own, they have to do it when they're comfortable. For me, my cousin's gay, and so we came out to each other on the same night. It was July 8th, 2017 or something. And I can't even imagine how hard it is for somebody who doesn't have, like Sophia had her sister and I had my cousin, so I wouldn't really know what to say to a person though.
And we're back. Okay, so what I thought was very interesting about what you two just said is about, you know, thinking about how on a global scale, we affecting just the culture that it is in our everyday lives, and how starting these conversations about where they stand before events happen doing that sort of dissemination of information, it almost sounds like it's like, oh, well, like thousands of years from now, humans are going to become more evolved, and like culture is going to advance, and globally we'll just be united. But I think it's interesting that you two are at the forefront of this cultural revolution. You guys are a part of an organization that's called the GSA, the Gay Sexuality Alliance, which is like a club at your high school where they talk about all these sorts of things. Just last week, you guys had an event that was a week long called Ally Week, where I've been informed by sources that it's something that usually happens when you're physically all there to have it. Happens across your entire school, where teachers, are display whether or not they're an ally or not. They make statements. There's events, and is there an assembly? I'm curious. Is there usually an assembly on Ally Week?
No, we haven't gotten that far yet, but we're working towards it.
And I just think that's incredible. I also heard that, like even the football players will like have like a little pride flag or something like that on their helmet and stuff. Yeah. And it's really something that accomplishes what you guys were just talking about. It's like, did I already say this? Like there's a family where like, they claim like they're not touched, but then suddenly we have a kid who went to their high school or their middle school or their elementary school, because guys, there are GSAs in elementary schools and middle schools in Glendale, where they can now have a conversation of, we're having this Ally Week, and the parents like, oh, what is that? And then suddenly you're having a conversation about proper ways to describe people's identities. People express each other differently. There are different people that exist. They exist when they're out there in the world. It's not just something that doesn't apply to you or your family, which I think is incredible. And do you guys happen to hold officer positions in this GSA?
Sofia does.
Yeah.
What is your position?
I'm the treasurer in the CBGSA, and the other officer positions, we have the president, the vice president, secretary, publicist, and communications. I don't know what to call it, but there's I guess communications director. That's a good word.
Yeah.
There's 6 of us.
That's amazing. What is a typical, since I never got to go to one, what is a typical GSA meeting like?
Usually the aim is to be educational and with like a goal of advocacy and activism. We've done multiple fundraising events, whether it be a bake sale. We've done glitter tattoos after school. We've sold merch, and this most recent Ally Week, we just did a straight up Facebook fundraiser for raising funds for the LA LGBT Center. So we try to establish a community for CV, and then as that community at CV, we like to, and our goal is to create more of a safe community, a welcoming community, a loving community in Los Angeles. So most meetings, they can be celebrational sometimes if we just had an event and it was very successful. Some of them are productive to prep for events, and but a lot of them are educational. We had a lot of presentations last year. We've only had one GSA meeting outside of Ally Week. It was just a get to know each other. We're all family, like something like that. So varies on the time of year, I guess.
As somebody who is, working to build a community for you guys to be a part of after you graduate from high school, what are sort of things that you do to celebrate? What are certain things that like you just had your Ally Week? I didn't get to come to Friday, which was your celebratory day. I was there on Thursday, which was about the social workers coming and talking about different resources in the community and stuff. But what is something that like, if I were to be like, I could snap my fingers, wave a magic wand, and make you guys feel like, it's the most, fun, vibrant, cool community that like you just want to be a part of and join and hang out with, what would you want to see? Where would you want to attend? What kind of event?
That's a good question. Ciaran, do you want to start on that one?
You're a little frozen. Oh, he's gone. And he's back.
We did not get any of that. Did you hear me, Ciaran?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Sorry, my service is, it says my connection's bad.
Oh no.
No worries. I was just asking if you wanted to take that question.
Oh, and the question is what was the question again?
Yeah, the question was if if I could wave my magic wand and make a really fun event for you guys to attend, what would it be?
Oh, okay. So in the past, we've had watch parties, like with movies that tend to touch on LGBTQ plus themes. I think those tend to bring people together a lot. But in general, just like a party. It sounds funny, but just like where we all just celebrate not being straight and just making that the norm. Yeah, those are my favorite.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think things like that, where there's celebration and inclusivity and just a normal party, something that we can feel normal but still ourselves in. So yeah, just like something that brings us all together, still touches on the LGBTQ community, which is obviously something as the LGBTQ community that we care about a lot. And we're still able to celebrate and be with the people that we connect with the most.
All right, so I'm gonna do just for for the listeners, you know what I mean. So hypothetically, if I were just like, hey, like we weren't in a pandemic world, and I was like, hey, like we're gonna do like an outdoor picnic that features LGBTQ music artists playing in the background. There's just gonna be food. Come whenever you want, hang out. That sounds like a great time.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, so much fun.
I mean, like I feel like sometimes, what am I thinking of? Like sometimes I'm like we're racking our brains to be like, oh, like what are the kids into? But it's like, you're just kind of, here to, if you're ready to show up and vibe and don't have to try too hard. And
Yeah.
well, that's cool. What would you guys like to see happen in the next year in Glendale? What would be like, oh, right now this seems like something that like just needs to exist. Otherwise, how could we progress?
I think if there was something sort of like not necessarily a community center, but like a safe haven for the community and allies, where you could literally just go and hang out and connect and meet with people. I think that'd be very interesting, similar to a GSA, but not as much as a club functional thing, something more laid back, where you can just find solace in people who are similar to you.
That's a beautiful idea. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ciaran.
I would definitely agree with Sophia. I think that it's vital to create a safe space for students who are questioning, who are struggling, and who are aware. And so, I mean, I could also just say like, oh, people just be more open, be more accepting, but like that's very difficult to. I think that's more of a generational thing. That it takes time to get to that point. It takes many voices and many stories, and so. But I think that a safe haven, like Sophia said, is much more tangible, and I would have loved to have that when I was in the early stages of discovering myself.
I love that idea. I'm going to really be thinking about that. That concludes all of the prepared questions that I have for you guys today. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you wish I asked you? Anything that like you wished you had finished a thought earlier but I kind of skipped over, or clarification?
Do you have something?
Covered it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
Okay, well, awesome, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Again, I am with Sofia Magdaleno, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm with Ciaran Pierce. And I'm Spencer Carney. So thank you so much for joining us today, guys, with GlendaleOUT.
Thank you.
Thank you.